A very warm good morning to all my dear darling students of Sri Gokulam Public School. This is Nida ma'am with you and I heartily welcome you all to my English online class. So my dear children, let me begin today's class asking you an important question. You know what a joint family system is and a nuclear family system. Right now, we are living in a nuclear family system, majority of us. Can you point out some advantages and disadvantages of living in a nuclear family system? Of course, there are many. The advantages would include things like we have more freedom, more space, more connection with our parents, more care and attention to the individuals. Whereas the disadvantages would be that there are also chances of negligence when parents are working. There are times, most often, that children are not given proper care. Sometimes overpressure children are also found in nuclear families. But one of the major disadvantage quoted often in a nuclear family is that they do not get the support of the extended family members. Who are the extended family members? These include your uncles, aunts, and most importantly, your grandparents. Often and over again, it has been established that in the growth and development of a child, grandparents play a very important role. They have a great hand in molding the character of a child. And we also know that the stories, the fables that our grandmother tells us, or that joyous rides that we have with our grandfathers, and the experience that he shares with us builds in a lot of strength, honesty, and values inside us. Hence, it is very important that we keep a very good relationship with our grandparents. What are your relations with your grandparents? Do you meet your grandparents often? Do you talk to them? Please ensure that you are giving much importance to them in your life. In today's story also, we have to discuss about such an important relationship between a grandmother and a grandson. The story that we are going to discuss today is The Portrait of a Lady, written by Khushwant Singh. It's in your Hornbill text, Unit 1. Khushwant Singh is a writer, a lawyer, a politician, and he has written a number of novels and short stories. Most of his stories include the countryside stories involving the relationship between family members, friends, etc. Humor is a major content in his story and he writes in a very simple language. Now let us get into the story. This story is narrated by Khushwant Singh as his own experience with his grandmother from his childhood to his almost adulthood, we can say. Hence, this story can be very clearly divided into 4 parts. First stage is his kindergarten stages with his grandmother, when he is beginning his school. Then comes his relationship with his grandmother when he is somewhere in his middle school. Third stage is definitely his teenagers. And the final stage which he has with his grandmother is when he is almost an adult. That is, you can say his college days or his after university stages. So like this, it is divided into 4 stages. In the 4 stages, he has a different kind of relationship with his grandmother. Of course, when we are growing up, our emotions change, our thinking process change. Thereby, our relationship with our close members in the family also evolves. Sometimes there are good experiences, sometimes there are bad experiences. Now, let us begin the story. The story begins with Khushwant Singh giving us a pictorial description of his grandmother. We can exactly imagine or draw a picture of her through the words of Khushwant Singh. He says that his grandmother has been a very old woman with a wrinkled face, and ever since he has seen her, she has been a very, very old woman. Okay, there was nothing like, a stage where his grandmother had been young. That stage of his grandmother he has not seen in her. So he has always seen his grandmother as a very old lady with lot of white hair, wrinkled face. He says that his grandmother was had a little stoop, a bent, so his grandmother used to walk with that bent. She had a rosary or a prayer beads in her, which she always used to chant, chanting in a voiceless sound. So like that murmuring sound, she used to keep on chanting. And expanse of whiteness is what he calls his grandmother as, means she was wearing a white sari always and had lot of white hair, was very fair in color. So it's like a Himalayan mountains, how you can see. That way his grandmother looked like. And then he also says that grandmother used to always tell to him stories when she was a young child. But for him, he could never imagine that his grandmother had a childhood or an age when she was playing around. He cannot imagine that. He used to think like, those are all stories. Like there are many stories, religious stories that his grandmother used to tell him. Stories of prophets, stories of gods. So these are also like some created or out of the world stories that his grandmother used to say when she described herself as a child. That was quite unbelievable for the child in Khushwant Singh. Okay, and he also says that there is a picture of grandfather in his house, and he also looks to be a very old kind of man. Another thing that he says about his grandmother is that his grandmother was never a pretty and a young lady, but she was very beautiful. What is the difference between pretty and beautiful? Beautiful here he means to say that she had a sense, she had a positivity within her. She did not have a features, very attractive features, but that love, that warmth, that understanding that you get from her made her look very beautiful from inside. So that is the difference between pretty and beautiful. She was nothing like what you call as your Aishwarya Rai or any other stunning film star. No, she did not have that long hair, pointed nose, or blue eyes, and thick lips. All these kinds of things she did not have. But that love and warmth that you get within her, that was so immense that made her very beautiful. Have you understood, children? So let us now get into the first stage of his relationship with the grandmother. So this was the stage when his parents were living in a city and they had left him with the grandmother. Now grandmother and the boy were living in a village and they had spent a lot of time together. The grandmother used to wake him up early in the morning, and while chanting her prayers in a voiceless whisper, she used to go on, dressing him up, bathing him, dressing him, changing his school uniform, giving him breakfast, which is some chapatis, and then getting him ready to school, and then they would leave to the school. He studied in a school which was very much attached to the temple. So what the grandmother used to do is that she used to leave the child, the boy, in the school, and she used to sit in the corridors of the temple, and she used to continue her praying inside the temple. While the child studied in the temple school, she used to chant her prayers over there. After the schooling, which was some subject he used to learn and some religious contents he used to learn, after the schooling, she and the boy used to go back home together. At this moment, some stray dogs or the street dogs used to follow them. For them, she would have carried the previous day's chapati with some butter smeared on it. She used to feed those dogs. So here you can see the kind of character that the grandmother is. The grandmother takes care of the boy. Not only that, she also takes care of the animals around us, even though they are stray dogs. So that shows that compassionate nature of the grandmother. Now, as the child grew up and the parents were in a better situation, what they did is that they asked the grandmother and the boy to come and stay with them in the city. Once they were in the city and the boy started to study in the city school, the relationship between the grandmother and the boy started having some differences. Now the grandmother could not accompany the boy to the school, and she used to go in a school bus. So that you can see how that connection is coming more distant between them. Okay, now there is less connection between the grandmother and the boy. He's studying in a city school. Grandmother cannot accompany him, and he is also learning subjects in English. Previously he was learning his native language and also some religious content, so his grandmother could help him. Now the grandmother cannot help him because he is learning his contents in English. Grandmother was also not very happy with the child learning science and music, especially because according to her, music is meant for people who are belonging to a very low category. She uses the word heralds and beggars, which means the people who are belonging to the lowest category in class. Okay, so not that they are very bad people, but very low classed people use these kind of use music. So she was not very happy with him learning music. He said that people who are coming from reputable families, gentle folk, they don't learn music. So that was her ideology. So she was against learning science and music because she thought that it would hamper or create a problem in his character. She preferred him to study the religious text because she was illiterate and she came from a village folk. It is an understandable concept. So there, because of these differences in his learning, because the grandmother could not accompany him to the school, a distance, a rift started growing in between the grandmother and the child. Then comes the stage when he is in a teenage. Of course, teenage is a stage where children develop their own opinions, and generally there is a conflict between the adults and the children while the children are in the teenage. What happens during this stage? Let's come to know that in the next class. So here I am concluding today's class. I hope you have understood what we have studied in today's class. Read through the textbook. It is very, very important, and mark the important points. Attempt your review test paper and download your notes and file them. Okay. So with this, I am concluding today's class. Be good children and stay happy always. Thank you.